The Supreme Court of Nigeria is getting set to hand down verdicts on two cases involving disputes around the leadership of two political parties, the African Democratic Congress and the People's Democratic Party, which many analysts say could have far-reaching consequences for the next general elections in 2027. Godfrey Eshemoge, a RISE correspondent, joins us live for an update from the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Godfrey, it's good to have you with us. What more can you tell us?
Yes, good afternoon, Nii and Cynthia in the studio. Well, the stakeholders, the PDP and the ADC stakeholders, they're already coming in at the moment. Things are beginning to take shape ahead of the 2 p.m. Time for the verdict to be delivered on these two very crucial appeals. That's for the PDP and the ADC. Like you said in the report leading to this, the whole lot hangs on the balance with regards to these two political parties. Now, they are relying on their appeals to see if the decisions of the lower court can be upturned. For the for the ADC, the Action Democratic Congress, is trying to see if the Supreme Court will have a difference of opinion with regard to the status quo antebellum position of the Court of Appeal, which was the reason that INEC hinged its action to recognize the Senator David Mark leadership of the ADC, while the PDP is seeking the court to take a different stance on the Court of Appeal decision, which nullified the convention held in Ibadan last year, November. So these two parties have an uphill task on their hands. Let's not forget the timetable of the electoral body INEC, which now sets a race against time for both political parties. So as it is right now, stakes are high. The stakeholders are taking their seats in the courtroom as we await the 2 p.m. time for the judgment, the verdict to be delivered by the 5-member panel of the Supreme Court right here in Abuja.
Absolutely, Godfrey. I believe at this point, most Nigerians are waiting for this, for 2 p.m. to know what will happen. And even on all the headlines for the major newspapers, including this day, we have this dominating the headlines with David Mark saying the ADC will be on the ballot and dismisses fears of exclusion. Let's speak specifically about the ADC in this case when it comes to the what's on the matter. ADC is challenging the interference of the courts in what they deem the alleged domestic affairs of the party and ascertains who among the trio of David Mark, Nafiu Gombe and Temitope Ogaga is the authentic national chairman of the party. Can you give us, of course you've been following this story for quite a while since it sprung up. Can you give us implications of various scenarios or outcomes, what that would mean for the ADC come 2027?
Okay, now the scenario is this. We have this ruling that's coming up at 2 p.m. Now, if it doesn't go the way of the David Mark-led leadership, what it means is whatever it is they're going to do, they must have in mind the timetable of INEC, which puts 10th of May as a deadline for the submission of membership lists of the political parties, and put their houses in order, doing some form of house cleaning to meet that deadline will now be more like impossible for the David Mark-led leadership. Whereas 30th of May is a deadline for the conduct of party primaries. At this point, anything to the contrary to what the David Mark-led appeal seeks to get will be very fatal to their move to overturn the decision of the lower court or the Court of Appeal. Now, what they are aiming at right now is to see if this judgment will be in their favor. So once it is in their favor, they'll still be within time to do the filing of to submit the list of members for the party, and then of course conduct the primaries that will, put the officials people that will take part in the forthcoming 2027 general elections. Anything short of that means ADC will not be on the ballot. That is just the summary of what the implication will look like in the event that things don't go its way. So that is just a summary of what it looks like at the moment for the ADC.
In other words, Godfrey, their fate hangs in the balance with this verdict at 2 p.m. Now, I'm sure you must have spoken to some members of both parties. What are their expectations towards the Supreme Court verdict today?
Well, of course, we've spoken to some of the members of these parties. Both sides are, claiming that they have their cases, going the right way. On the Nafi Bala side, they are saying, well, their party was hijacked by the caretaker committee caretaker leadership headed by Senator David Mark. While, David Mark is on the Senator David Mark leadership, they are claiming they followed due process in arriving at where the party is at the moment. So it's just claims and counterclaims from both sides. And let's not forget the decision of yesterday from the Federal High Court. Justice James Joyce Abdul Malik, I beg your pardon, more like dents a hole to the hopes, as it were, of the David Mark leadership, where it says the court, where it says they haven't conducted valid congresses by interfering with the leadership structure of the party in the states where these congresses were conducted. Of course, those congresses are prelude to the convention held recently by the ADC right here in Abuja. So that is, on the very flip side, a negative issue for the Senator David Mark leadership faction of the ADC. So that is basically, in summary, what it is looking like on the part of the ADC, of the David Mark faction of the ADC at the moment.
Indeed, Godfrey, well done for touching on ADC specifically. Of course, we know that there are 4 separate appeals concerning both the ADC and the PDP. In the PDP's case, like you mentioned in your intro, is validation of the outcome of the National Convention that took place November 15th and 16th last year. Tell us more about what today's judgment would mean in the PDP's case specifically. What do outcomes look like, or implications of the outcomes, possible outcomes?
Yes, the PDP is quite dicey, because when the appeal court gave its verdict some weeks ago, it specifically stated that the conduct of the convention in Ibadan stood on a wrong footing because it was in breach of the Electoral Act, it was in breach of the Constitution of Nigeria, and the breach of the Constitution of the PDP itself, because the congresses in lead up to the convention weren't held across board, that some states were left out in the conduct of the congresses, and going ahead to conduct convention without holding congresses smacks of breach of the rights of those people who would have, participated in the convention. And let's not forget, this is a double whammy for the PDP. There's also Sule Lamido, former Jigawa State Governor, who also is appealing the holding of the convention, who is appealing on the grounds that he was excluded from taking part in the chairmanship election. So that is another reason why the convention was nullified. So he is asking, he asked the court to nullify the election on grounds of exclusion. And of course, the lower court and the Court of Appeal, the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal heeded his appeal and nullified the election and deemed it illegal, and asked INEC to not recognize the outcome of this convention. So these are the things that INEC, that the PDP will seek that the Supreme Court will have a difference of opinion on it at the moment. But then analysts are already saying, going by the Court of Appeal decision that they acted in breach of the Federal High of its own constitution, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the Electoral Act, seems to be like a hopeless case for the PDP, because at this point it gives the court jurisdiction to wade into the matter to try to address it, because it affects the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it affects the National Electoral Act, and then the Constitution of the party. In this case, it now gives the court leeway to enter and try to right the wrongs of the PDP. So in this case, the matter of jurisdiction doesn't keep the courts away from doing what it needs to do to put things right.
We await the verdict on the Supreme Court cases involving ADC and, of course, PDP leadership crisis today at 2 p.m. And, of course, our correspondent, Jeffrey Shemoje, would like to thank you for your thoughts on that. And, of course, more updates as it unfolds afterwards. Good to have you with us.